Welcome to the Chad Carden Podcast, where people and culture make all the difference. Our guests are real leaders that are making real impact by creating even better cultures and even better results. We're going to talk about things that most people aren't talking about. We're going to talk about things that leaders are thinking but might be scared to say. We're going to get into issues that can give you practical and tactical ways to set you up for a higher probability of success. Let's get after it. All right, my friend, we are live. Listen, we have a good one today. I'm slotted to do Brooks got me back to back on some of these things, but I get to spend an hour with Jordan Sharp. He's been a guy that I think I've known since probably 2017, so maybe 2018. I can't remember exactly when we got introduced. And him and I have just stayed connected. We've done a lot of work together. I'm excited for a couple things for the listeners. One, to really lean into Jordan's philosophy about how he approaches this kind of life in general. He certainly has an interesting perspective of how he keeps everything balanced in his life. But two, how he approaches kind of from a leadership standpoint, how he approaches developing, improving performance of people that, get the results that you want to get. So first of all, Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chad, thanks for having me, man. Like you said, it's been a relationship that has grown over the years. And obviously most recently, I think our relationship has gotten tighter, which I've appreciated. But yeah, man, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so just start off by just kind of telling the audience, your story, your journey, kind of how you arrived to this point. I don't care how far you want to go back, but where you want to start, and then kind of to current day, what are you doing in the professional world?
Yeah, sure, man. Honestly, it all started as a young kid that just had a dream to be an entrepreneur. I told my mom and my friends and everybody when I was younger that I wanted to own my own business. I just saw a path for that. I had a passion for that. And I apparently thought that getting into insurance when I was 21 years old was the way to do it. And my journey really started with just an opportunity that I really felt I could really have a vision of being successful. And in my mind back then, my idea of success was money, right? I think honestly,
Sure.
I was very success and money driven. I'm a very competitive person, being an athlete. But really, it's developed over the years, and it happened very quickly. In insurance, obviously, you're chasing sales, you're chasing numbers, you're chasing all the things. But really, my purpose changed when I filed my first claim. I had a big cancer claim that I filed for one of my clients. And it was really in that moment that just kind of changed my outlook and made me understand that, hey, maybe this insurance thing just isn't about, chasing a number, chasing success. And it really kind of changed the impact that I realized that I could kind of make. And, that led into really me approaching my business a different way, and then specifically led into leadership, and leadership was a passion of mine. I coached at a very early age. At the age of 19, I held 4 coaching positions in my local school district. So, I loved coaching. And so I found a path of leadership in this insurance game. And really that's when my purpose kind of changed. How can I use this platform to impact people? And that's really what's kind of led me in my latter parts of my journey and my success in business. 14 years with Aflac directly, very blessed career with them. And then most recently started in my own agency with a partner. And that's what we're doing. And we're really trying to build a foundation of just really impacting people and using the insurance platform to do it. As very grounded in my faith. And now I just like to say, just kind of doing the Lord's work and using the insurance platform to do it. And that's really where we're at.
That's awesome. I appreciate you setting that foundation. Let me go back because you said something. Josh Buffington got me into the Aflac world way back whenever we met, 2017, 2018, when I met Nate Harrison. And I think it was the Galaxy Group that we did our first kind of engagement with in St. Louis. And we still do work with them today. Obviously, we're still integral part in some of their markets and some of their territories. But so from the outside, I have always seen Aflac as a sales organization that is very driven by numbers and revenue and cash and money and all that different type of stuff. But I actually was at an event with Mike Evans, I think up in the Dakotas, and they highlighted some of the claims, right, that people came in. And I mean, they were emotional stories. I mean, they were like, people were crying, and I'm like, wow, that was a hard act to follow, because I think I was on stage next.
So talk to us about that, because you mentioned people get into this and entrepreneurs and they want to make money and they want to, that to me, there's different definitions of success, and I'm not here to knock any of them. But when you filed that first claim, what was it that you're like, okay, there's a different journey for me, or there's a different path for me? Kind of double click on that a little bit.
First of all, Mike's a tremendous leader. He was also a mentor of mine in the business. And he always does a great job. Again, it goes back to culture, of reminding people the why of what they do. And I think for me personally, in that moment, back to that claim story, that's where I really found the why and the purpose. I think when you realize that, insurance, I think in general has a bad connotation, right?
Yeah.
I think people kind of look at insurance in not the most positive way. But really, I think that what I've experienced in my end is, in the way we've approached it, is always trying to be there for people when they need us the most. Insurance is something obviously you have to budget for, and it costs money to make sure you have that peace of mind and protection. Man, when you need it, to have a company like Aflac that has been able to be there for their policyholders and help us deliver on the promises that we make when we sit down and educate these people on these programs and how it can benefit their family and how it can protect them in their time of need. But to see it go to work and to see, yourself being able to really help that family in one of their most vulnerable moments, whether it's, they're facing death with cancer, right? Or in the financial burden, not only the financial, but the emotional burden that comes with that. And not only just be there to help process claims, but to be a friend. I think that that's one of the things that this journey has really allowed, is to build relationships with people and policyholders and agents and, your peers and all the things that you can really connect. I think we're made for people. We're made for each other. And I think that, my experience in insurance, specifically with Aflac, was really the ability to be a friend to people, not just an insurance agent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Insurance definitely sometimes has a bad rap or a bad brand, but you're right. I mean, everybody bitches about it until you need it. And then when it's there, you're glad that it certainly is in place. And you've experienced that over the years. Your journey in Aflac, I know it's very entrepreneurial. You have a great brand behind you, but at the end of the day, it's not sink or swim. And you certainly have support, but it takes a special person. There's all sorts of different definitions of entrepreneurs, right? Going out, bootstrapping, doing the things. And a lot of it overlaps, but some of it doesn't. So what were some of those things that you learned along your journey that allowed you to be successful, and you instilled in, maybe new associates or new agents as they came on to the Aflac platform? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. A lot of it just comes down to consistency and showing up every day. I think that, having the ability to, whether you have a good day or a bad day, to just still keep going. I think that's the difference. It's a grind, and you're going to get beat up. Baseball and sports are always easy analogies for life lessons, right? I think you learn a lot about life in sports, but baseball is a good one. Some of the best hitters we've ever seen in all of sports, these Hall of Fame baseball players, they fail, 7 times out of 10. And they're considered the best they've ever, best in the entire world. And so sales is no different. And you have to understand and embrace failure. And failure is part of a process. Failure is part of learning and growing. But failure is part of building relationship in sales, right? I always like to say no is not no, it's just not right now. And I think I always used to tell my team and myself, professional persistence is what it takes to be successful. And, just not giving up on yourself and continuing to just fight those battles. And there's going to be days that you just are defeated, but you got to understand, hey, it was that moment and the circumstance you're in. It's not the bigger picture that defeats you, and you just got to keep showing up. So it's easier said than done, but there's simple principles that are consistent, and it doesn't matter whether you're, in sales or you're running your own business. And really everything is sales if you think about it, Chad. Really, yeah. But it's really just persistency and being honest and having humility, being willing to fail and learn and grow from those mistakes. I always tell I try to tell my kids this all the time. We don't win and lose in life. We win and learn. And I think that's what I found really contributed to my success, but in leadership, how I tried to lead my people, all the time, is just with consistency and continue to show up when you don't feel like it.
You know, I heard something the other day that reminds me of that. A guy by the name of Daryl Winiger, who's a buddy of mine, who's the president of a very large company here locally, and he said something. Maybe this is mainstream, I don't know, but I've never heard of it. He said, you know, it's either we win or it's just professional tuition, right? It's just tuition that we're paying to learn as we go along. And I thought that was a very good way to put it. Like you mentioned, we win or we learn as we go forward. I want to get into the kids thing, but again, I don't want to chase that just yet, because I honestly believe that you and I have the same vision with our kids, which is setting them up for the highest probability of success in society, however they want to define it. But I think that I certainly don't want my kids to become a conformist. Not that I'm a contrarian, but I think there's so many rules out there that are just Vision Lakiani calls them bullshit rules, right? That people just kind of align to. I want my kids to be able to create their own path and live into that path versus feeling like they're forced into something or, just stuck. That's the way that it is. And I know that you have that same vision. So make sure we get back to that. But let me kind of talk. So in your journey, as you went along, as you built your professional career, you've went from, starting out worrying about Jordan, right? Making sure that money was coming in, there's food on the table, and then as you elevated your career, you went from worrying about Jordan to now, worrying about some people, and then worrying about a bunch of people. And then, your network of who you were serving internally inside the organization just got larger and larger and larger. How were you able to still, and this is maybe selfishly for me as I continuously grow in my journey, but one thing I admired about you watching your career is you were able to kind of elevate your mindset, because it's real, when you have to worry about you and then you have to worry about others, it's sometimes you get lost in that, and it's hard to kind of separate and realize that you can't own everything, right? You oversight it, but you can't own everything. And how are you able to maybe just trust that others were doing what they needed to do to get the results that you were asked to get in an organization that is pretty demanding with results?
Yeah, and I think that's the constant challenge of leadership, is really how can you utilize the gifts that other people have to accomplish a goal collectively. And I would say that that's a progression in leadership, right? I think that early on in my career, Chad, I wasn't the best at that. I think in my rookie leadership journey, I was still the guy that was carrying the torch and taking us across the finish line. But I think as you scale and as you grow, as you've seen, you have to transition, and you have to understand that you've got to be able to use your team to get to where you want to go, as you continue to scale and get higher in the leadership ranks. Because you start out managing a few people, and it doesn't take as much to turn the ship or turn the results. You can turn results in that same day, or in a couple days, or in a week. And then when you get a little bit higher, it takes a little bit longer to turn the ship. And now maybe it's 2 weeks to a month to see results. And then you get to like a market level, for example. If we use the Aflac scenario, man, you really have to lean on other people. And so I think delegation and understanding the talents of people around you are so important in leadership. But a lot of it's just like sports teams, again, the analogies. You will be successful based on the people you surround yourself with, period. I think the best leaders go find people better than them. And I think that that's the goal that you always want to try to strive for in leadership, is finding good people, because you can't do it all, to your point, and everybody has different strengths. And so you may be a phenomenal leader, but a lot of times the great leaders are the ones that delegate and find the people that are better than them or have strengths in their weaknesses. I think you always want to lean into the things that only you can do, do what only you can do. But you have to have systems and processes for the things that you're not naturally good at. And that typically comes in people. You got to find those people that have those gifts that you don't have, so that you can complement each other and really align and come to a unified goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as the pool gets bigger, that's harder and harder to find, right? I mean, I always say business would be easy if there weren't people. Leadership would be easy if there weren't people. So what were some of those things that you did to continuously improve the performance of your people, right? That's one, and kind of a secondary question, which you can answer kind of in two parts. But then how did you stay sane? Because, leading the large team that you led, they're still looking at you, right? I mean, this buck stopped with you. And so what did you do to stay sane, knowing that, it's kind of in everybody else's hands? So, and again, I know those are two different questions, but let's first talk about the improvement performance of people. What did you do to continuously make sure you're developing them? And then kind of looking selfishly, what did you do to just kind of keep yourself sane through the whole process?
Yeah. So to answer the first part, I think it goes back to just really investing in people, not only in what their roles and responsibilities are, but really who they are as people and humans first. What's important to them, what's going on in their lives. I think that when when you really show people how much you care, then they'll move for you, right? And I think that's really where I've always kept my focus. It's always been about the people, and I continue to keep my focus about the people. So I think the more that you invested in others, the more that you show that you cared, the more that you checked in on people. I'm big on transparency and accountability too. Like, if you've worked and dealt with me, hopefully the one thing that you'll say about me is I am very black and white. You're always going to know where you stand with me. And I've always kind of led that way and felt it's so important, because I think that helps you manage the tough conversations and obviously makes the easy ones so much easier. But, part of leadership is being able and willing to have the tough conversation, because that's where a lot of people, I think, really struggle and have failures in leadership, is that refusal to have the tough conversation. And sometimes that tough conversation is you admitting as a leader that you're wrong, right? I think in humbling yourself and maybe mistakes that you've made, that can build a culture of trust and make sure people feel safe to understand that mistakes happen and it's okay. But I think that's mainly, the way that I try to keep my focus is it's people first, and obviously giving them space to give feedback, but really humble myself as well in the process, because it's fast-paced moving, man. You know this. It's a fast-moving machine, and if you're not keeping up, it's a challenge. And through that, sometimes you make mistakes because you have to make quick decisions. But I think, making sure that you're holding people accountable as a leader, investing in them, but also yourself stepping back and saying, hey, that was my bad, and owning it. I'm always the person too who's going to look myself in the mirror, Chad, and probably take the blame when I shouldn't. I've just always felt that I have the control to really move the outcome, and it first starts with me. And so whether it's good or bad, I try to give my people the credit when it's good, and when it's bad, I try to take the credit for that and make sure I'm making changes to move us in a good direction. So there's the answer to that question.
Yeah, really quick. I hope people are getting their pens and pads out, because there's some really, really good nuggets in there that if you're missing, just listen to this a couple times, because I just think that there's things that seem obvious but just don't come in to play when it comes to implementation and action. So I appreciate you saying that. And one of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that, and I know this about you, is you're quick to give credit, and you're also quick to fall on the sword, which that's sometimes has its adverse impacts. But in a space that you've lived in, where it's what have you done for me, today, that sometimes can backfire. But I think for the most part, it served as an asset for you. So it's a high quality in you, buddy. So let's go to the other part. So what did it was fast paced, and it still is. You're still building a business right now, which we'll get into in just a minute, and you're still looking to kind of expand and what it is you're doing. But how do you just kind of allow things to unfold and kind of stay sane in the world that you live in?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that question. And the simple answer is really it's my faith, my foundation of my faith. I think has been so important, and that's been a journey. I think so often I'm the guy who wants to just do it all, right? I want to control. I'm a control freak, if you will. Like I'm a solution-based guy. I'm a problem solver at heart, and I'm definitely the one who just wants to say, okay, here's a problem, here's the solution, and run with it. What I've learned is I can't do it all, and I think really my faith has kept me grounded, really submitting just all my challenges and all the opportunities in front of me, and trying to just be submissive to the Lord and not go before Him. And it's a constant challenge, but my faith has really been what has grounded me and allowed me to stay positive, Make sure that I'm coming every day with joy, regardless of the situation. And trust me, there's been so many moments in my leadership journey that's been hard to lead through, right? I've had a lot of years where my team was winning and we were doing great, and other years where it was a struggle and it was a building process and it was a grind. But every day you got to show up. You got to show up with the energy. You got to show up with belief in the vision. And, so faith is the first thing, but it's about the people you surround yourself with, I think, in life. The old adage of you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with is so true. And thank God I've got probably the most important person on earth, my wife. That is my rock and my foundation. So she's probably the absolute key here of somebody that I go to kind of help keep me sane. And she's just got the gift of encouragement. So God knew what he made her for me. But it goes beyond that. It's your friends, the people that you surround yourself from a mentor standpoint, leaning on your peers that are in that battle with you. I think, as a leader, they always tell you, if you got complaints or you got challenges, you never take that conversation down. You always go up or at that same level. And so I think it's important that you just lean on other people, because in understanding, you just can't do it alone. And so I find my fuel, in my foundation and my faith, and then the people I surround myself with, and just constantly leaning on people. I'm a communicator, man. I'm not one of those guys. I think guys sometimes struggle with this, that keep everything bottled in. I am very, very open with what's going on, because that's about the only way that I can stay sane. And again, I've got great friends and great peers, and my wife is fantastic of just being a listening ear and continuing to encourage me. But I think that my relationship with Christ has been the main thing that's kind of kept me going here and just keeping me positive for my people. So
that's awesome. I was in DC yesterday working with a bunch of C-suite executives, and we did some panels. We did a CEO panel, a COO panel, and a CSO panel. And this was one of the questions that we talked about when we were talking to the audience. And everybody, I think there's not here to debate it or anything, but I don't. Everybody had a connection to a higher sense or a higher purpose, whatever that was, right? Whatever that was. And one of the things that you're saying is, especially in today's world with so much noise and so much easy to just kind of get bogged down into everything, that just realizing that there's something bigger out there, however you define it, whatever it is, like, and it's almost like you just surrender to that and just realize that, there's things going on that we don't realize, and when we try to control everything, that's when we really lose control. So I really appreciate that lens as you go through this. Again, I could talk to you for hours, Jordan, on this stuff, but a couple other topics I want to dive into. One is so leaders out there today. And listen, I know you're an entrepreneurial journey. You're a leader. In all different aspects of that word, it's defined. But if you had a young person that wanted to become a leader, that was maybe in your shoes 20 years ago, that wanted to become an entrepreneur, wanted to go out and chase his or her dream, with all the noise today and all the divide and all the, it seems like the world's going to shit, right? All these different types of things. What would be the 2 to 3 things piece of advice that you would say, listen, there's 100 things you got to focus on, but here are probably the top 2 or 3 things that if you just stay focused and true to these things, you have a high probability of reaching your potential and reaching your dreams?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's being grounded, right? Obviously, I'm grounded in my faith. I think that's so important. So I'm always going to recommend people there. When it comes to just the task at hand, I think I've said it before, but it's culture and people first. I think when you can have a people-first mentality in business, whether it's just you running a product and selling a product that you believe in, make it about your clients and the people and how you can serve them. But as you go and you grow, you always have to grow with people and build a team and add more people to that team. And so, man, the main thing is that you stay people first in everything that you do. That's my big thing. A lot of it's just clarity and communication. I think that you want to make sure you're a very direct communicator, a clear communicator, a two-way communicator, right? Like I said, I think when you're willing to understand and listen to your people's feedback, because they've got skill sets, they have abilities too, whether it's, again, your clients. So if you've got a product and you're serving a client, listen to their feedback. That's going to help you improve your product, right? If you have people that are part of your team and your systems, listening to them on how they can make what they feel from their lens would make their, your process better. So I think communication is so important. And really, I think confidence comes from competence. Making sure you're prepping yourself, right, on your product, making sure you're knowledgeable about what you're doing, making sure your people are knowledgeable about what they're doing. If you can make sure you're training them and giving them the tools to be successful, whether it's yourself, if you're a solo entrepreneur, or your team as you grow and develop it, I think it's so important. But that all goes back to people first, right? I think everything I just said there is probably a people first mentality. But, communication is so key. It's a big part of that.
Yeah, another thing you brought in earlier, which I think is also another anchor point, is just staying the course, being consistent, willing to see out your goals, right? I think it was Dana White I heard say recently that in this world, if you're half a savage, right? If you're just half a savage, because people give up so easily. Yes. And, you've heard me say kind of the 3 times rule, which I learned from Adam Carroll years ago. It takes 3 times it takes 3 times as much time as you thought it would do, 3 times the money, 3 times the effort. And people give up too quickly, where if you just stay the course, you will eventually see the fruits of your labor by just maybe just outstaying everybody, right, in that space. But number 2, it takes time. It takes momentum. And people are so quick to, it's almost like I heard something on the podcast the other day where, people want to plant seeds in the ground and then they want to dig it up 3 days later to see if it's growing, right? So you just disrupt everything. It's like, let the process play out and have trust and faith that if you plant it, eventually you're going to see whatever the outcome is that you want to have it. And I think that's another thing that's probably part of your DNA, that's just part of your DNA that you don't even realize. Would you say that?
100%. And, we're in it right now. It's a brand new business, starting our own agency. We're just finishing year 2. And I'll tell you, statistically, this is where most businesses fail. And I'm telling you, if most of these businesses would have just kept going another 6 months, that's probably where they would have found their success. And so, but I'll tell you, it can get you. I think that, even in what we're doing, we have a firm foundation and we've got a really good vision of what we want to accomplish. But there's moments, Chad, I think no matter who you are, we're all human, no matter what the perception is of any leader, anybody that you see, or any professional athlete or big time CEO. Everybody has that moment where they question themselves, unfortunately. But it's really about, again, do you fall back on your vision and what your true beliefs are? And do you stay committed, right? Because commitment always shows up. And I think if you stay committed in what you do, through the good and the bad, you're showing up each day regardless of that outcome and that day and that circumstance. That's where at the other end you typically see success, to your point.
100%. I think that's awesome. Let me go back to because we've talked about this offline, obviously, but one of your biggest points is being a dad and being a father. And I think all the things that we've been talking about here are the things you want to instill in your kids. We mentioned that a little earlier. So one of the things that I am challenged with is, I got almost a 17-year-old. He'll be 17 shortly. I got an 11-year-old. And Sarah and I, my wife and I, always talk about how I want them to find their definition of success, whatever that might be, right? I don't necessarily want them to go work for a company. I certainly don't know if I want them to take over my business. If that's what they want to do, great. Then I'll foster that. It's almost like I'm there to guide them and certainly make sure they don't get out of bounds. But I want them to write their own chapter. I don't want them to feel forced at it. But whatever they do, I want to make sure that I've given them the foundation to be as successful, however they define success, whether that's money or contacts or relationships or whatever it is it might be. Talk to me about that and some of the things you're doing with your kids to instill these things that they can live into and hopefully continuously live out their dreams.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I'll tell you, probably the hardest leadership journey I've ever had was being a dad. It's the most rewarding, but probably one of the toughest and most impactful and most important, I think, leadership journeys that you can take on is to be a dad and to be a mother. I think one thing I try to obviously instill in my kids is their foundation and making sure they have confidence in who they know they were created to be, Right? I think that's so important. But when it comes to life, Chad, think about this. And you can think about yourself and everybody that you know. Probably the one thing that holds people back from reaching their potential is fear. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Fear has been probably, when I look back at my younger self, I can pinpoint so many times where I didn't achieve here because I was too scared to, right? Or I didn't speak up, or I didn't do this or that. And it was fear that I allowed grip me in the moment that stopped me from doing that. If you think about so many people that have so many gifts, they just fall in line to status quo, and they have an internal pull to do something, but fear tells them they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they can't do it, all these things. And so that's one thing I really, really try to be very consistent in instilling in my kids, is to not have any fear, right? To be willing to fail at everything, right? And to make sure that they don't ever go into a situation where they make a mistake and they don't do anything but get encouraged through it, and that they learn through it. And I really try to force my kids into positions to fail, because I don't ever want them to be afraid of a moment. I don't ever want them to feel like when they mess up that they should feel shame or anything like that. I want to teach them that they should embrace failure and they should learn from it. It should be something that just makes them grow and better. And I think if we do that with our kids, they will find their path and their calling and what they're supposed to do, by learning through their life experiences and never being afraid to take that leap, to take that step, to speak up when they feel led to. And so that's, for if you had to pick like one thing that I really try to work with my kids on, it's to eliminate fear in their lives and have them embrace that emotion, but to push through it. How do we overcome that emotion so that we can, achieve what we want to achieve and learn, right? Again, we don't win and learn in life. We win and lose. Sorry, we don't win and lose in life. We win and learn. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing for me as a dad right now.
That's so powerful. I think, psychologists say the biggest battle we face every single day is that internal chatter, right? It's the conversations we have in our own head. And most of our wounds, me included, are self-inflicted, right? They're just, we are our biggest headwind a lot of times. And when you can overcome that, and really, but like you said, you're trying to make them battle tested, right? You're giving them, not that you're purposely putting them in situations that are harmful, but you're giving them situations where you have to overcome that, because most people will fold like a cheap suit. But if you're battle tested and you realize you might not always come out on the outcomes that you want, but at least you went through that journey and you'll learn from it, as you mentioned, versus just always, Rick Lefke, who I've done a lot of work with for the past, 2.5 decades now. He's kind of a mentor of mine. We've done a lot of work, and he always says when it's time to go, you want to look back and say that was a hell of a ride, not I wish I would have, right? And so you want to kind of minimize those regrets. And I think helping eliminate the fear helps minimize the regrets that you might have, when it's time to say goodbye on this thing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you saying that.
Fear's never not going to be there. It's always going to be there, but it's about how you can push through it and teach them to push through the fear and understand that it's a lie. Fear is a liar. That's even scriptural. That's biblical. So fear is not from the Lord. And so it's definitely something, again, I think is so important. There's so many things that I think we could talk for hours on parenting and where we want to focus our kids, but that's one nugget I try to focus on.
I appreciate that. And I know we're bouncing all over with topics, but I mean, it's just so little time. I want to get it all in. Talk to us about what you're doing now, right? How that journey's going, and, the markets that you're serving. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So right now, my partner and I started an agency called Gen 1 Agency. And really, we're a general agent, really serving the independent agent and the broker. I think that, obviously we try to equip them with products and services, but Chad, our real vision is to really help take these brokers into the 21st century, right? And making sure we're focused with them on automations and efficiencies, and not only providing a product strategy, but helping them use that and be more efficient so that they can really not have burnout in everything that they do. And I think what we really see in the market is just change. I think technology is really just driving the market right now in this insurance space. And I think that those that are adapting are going to be the ones that win. And I think right now what you're seeing is people want convenience, right? They want transparency. They're wanting more the easy button on insurance, right? Self-enroll options, all this comes with technology. And I think we're seeing more virtual enrollments, more AI and automation, and really that big shift from just a transactional sale to relationship-driven advising, but figuring out how you can balance that with technology, but still being authentic with the human side. And that's really where our focus is really trying to help those agencies find that balance. And so we're really focused on, everything from automations to texting funnels and different training structures to help them really plug and play and win.
What's working for you, and what are some of the challenges right now?
Yeah, I think what's working for us is just helping them get there. I think that really providing exclusive products that we know their clients need is something that's great. And again, really getting them into the tech side. A lot of insurance agencies are run by the baby boomers. Well, think about that, Chad. And that's the generation right now that's retiring at a clip of 10,000 people per day. And these are people that didn't originally grow up on technology. And so a lot of times these old insurance agencies are kind of, I don't want to say in a bad way, but they're stuck in their own ways, right? They have their way that's been so successful all these years, and trying to get them to think outside the box and really move into really how the market is adapting is such an awesome opportunistic challenge that we have. And so really providing that vision, casting the vision, providing those resources and starting that has been very successful. And I think the challenge is again, just perfecting our systems and processes and the constant, opportunities to learn and gain feedback from our clients and our internal team to get better, like everything we've talked about. I think when you start a business, right, you have a vision, you go to market, the market tells you what they like, they tell you what they don't like, things you need to improve on. And I think that's where you got to be willing to drop the pride and just adjust and really develop your product to be, something that is always adapting. It'll never be a finished product. I think if you feel like you've got a finished product, you're not growing your business the right way. So that's kind of, been the exciting things, but obviously it's a business, right? So it's been a grind, but we're loving every minute of it, and we're excited for year 3.
Yeah, a lot of spaces right now are moving at lightning speed. Your space included, because technology and AI and all the different things. And I think that what I appreciate about where you and your partner are is you're looking to evolve as the space evolves, yet stay true to the core business and what it is you're trying to accomplish. But if you're not adopting and adapting to what's happening in your space, I mean, you're going to be a dinosaur quickly.
Very quick.
And I think like you mentioned in your space, there's real opportunity to get ahead, because some people are just their adoption rate is nil for some of these people, and they're going to as they exit the space, how do you make sure that the kind of the next generation is set up for success, and serving the market the way they need to serve it? So how do people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so obviously we're on the socials. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the main two, Instagram, all those things. But www.gen1agency.com is our website. You can go there, but follow us on all the socials. Gen 1 Agency, you can search, and we do a lot of posting. We got a Monday morning motivation video we send out every Monday, so if you want to hop on that, you can. But that's how you can connect with us.
That's awesome, man. Again, I could do this for hours. I super appreciate your time, certainly your wisdom and your thoughts. I don't think this is probably the end of the conversation. We might, as we continue this podcast journey, which when we're in the infancy stages we're learning along the way too. There might be a second episode or a third episode. You might be a reoccurring guest on this whole thing. So, Jordan, appreciate your time. We will see you on the other side. Keep making awesome stuff happen, buddy.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet.